My mom was a nice little old lady, about 90 years old.
Not quite 5 feet tall, and a little childlike in her approach to people and things.
She loved to do all kinds of things. She liked to talk to people. She liked to dance. She liked to entertain, and that was her nature and her character. We brought her to Glenwood Springs to live with us.
Glenwood Springs was a place that we retired to. It was in the mountains of Colorado, and it was sort of living out our dream. She was renting a small apartment in a fourplex downtown across the street from the police department.
We thought we had put her into a safe place. It was a nice little town. Nothing really ever happened there. But unfortunately, there was a tragedy that occurred in our life.
3 days before my 60th birthday, April 11th, 1996, we went to pick up Mom.
Our normal routine with Mom was to take her every Thursday to the marketplace and do her shopping.
And sometimes we would take her to lunch and spend the morning with her, just doing usual things. And I tried to call her that morning, and she never answered her phone. And I tried several times, and I said, Tom, it's unusual. Usually I call her before we leave.
And as I approached the door to that apartment, I noticed that it was slightly ajar. And that was very unusual, and instantly I was concerned because she always kept her place locked up.
And when we went in, we found that the window had been broken in.
I called her name and there was no answer. And as we moved through the living room and then into the bedroom, we found her over in a corner.
She was on the floor next to her bed, and she was dead. She had died sometime in the night.
And it was obvious that she had been badly beaten and assaulted.
So we called the police, and then a very strange nightmare ensued. Shortly after the police became involved, within 3 days, they discovered who they felt was at the cause of this, and they apprehended him in Grand Junction, Colorado, which was 90 miles west of Glenwood Springs, and brought him back to town, and he was arraigned in court, and he pleaded not guilty.
As we found out later, he was a 25-year-old roofer who had actually lived in the same apartment building that my mother did, but had subsequently moved away. And we additionally learned that he was brought up in a very dysfunctional family, and if you ever tried to devise a family unit that would destroy a child, this was the family unit.
And we found out that he had been drinking and doing drugs for about 3 days prior.
So he was just actually a train wreck waiting to happen.
All of a sudden, I have someone that I loved who has been killed, and I can't do anything. But I was so very, very angry, and God had to deal with me on that one.
The deep concern that I had at that point was that it would be destructive to my relationship with the Lord. But also I knew that there were additional impacts that would come with that, and they would be mental, emotional, spiritual, and all of the rest of those things that go along with disobedience. So I really thought that one through, and then the Lord was gracious enough to change my head and change my heart with regard to that issue of forgiveness. To get that point to where I knew that I had to forgive Arnie publicly was probably several months into this whole ordeal through the court and so forth. So finally, through all the turmoil of the different proceedings of the legal system, we came to the final day when Arnie was appearing in court and to be sentenced. And it was at that time when they allowed the family of the victim to come forward and to talk to the judge and tell them what they think the judge ought to do with regard to Arnie. And so as Irene and I walked up to the judge's bench, instead of speaking to him, we turned and faced Arnie. And I asked Arnie, did he have any regret or did he have any remorse in what he did? And there was a little bit of a pause, and then Arnie said, yes, I regret what I did. And I said to him, well, that is very good for the family to know, because to have that understanding is extremely helpful. And we would like you to know that we have no animosity towards you, and that we desire to forgive you for what you have done. And we know that you're going to be going to a very dark and a dangerous place, and we certainly hope that you will take the opportunity to try and salvage your life and not let it be a complete waste. And we would like very much to help you to do that if we can. We have resources that we can direct to you, and we want to know if you would be interested in receiving those. And there was, again, another pause, and then he nodded his head to us in saying yes.
While Tom was talking, I stood beside him, but I turned a little bit and looked at the courtroom. And I was just absolutely amazed, because I saw the police chief with tears running down his face. I saw reporters out there, their hands were shaking. They couldn't even take notes. And I just had the most overwhelming knowledge that God was present in that room, and that everyone in there was just totally shaken. And it's a power that I have never felt before. I hope I don't have an opportunity to feel it again for that kind of a situation, but it was amazing, just amazing.
The judge gave him his sentence, which was 90 years in prison without any expectation of parole for 35 years, which would mean he wouldn't be out released until he's 60 years of age.
The next morning, after we had publicly forgiven Arnie the day before, a chaplain called us and informed us that he had been meeting with Arnie for the 10 months, and Arnie had accepted Christ, and that's why he changed his plea to guilty. That's why we didn't have to go through a trial. And he said, what you did for that young man and his newfound faith by forgiving him was just wonderful. And then there was a beautiful article in our paper and in the Grand Junction paper about us standing in court and forgiving Arnie, and about our faith, and about how we worshiped, who we worshiped, and why we did those things. So we were really elated by that.
Well, Arnie has turned into an amazing person. We've been in touch for 15 years, pretty much on a continuous basis, with him via letter and other means. And there are two chaplains there that each time we talk to them, they just sing his praises because of what he has accomplished in the prison. He is a leader in the prison. He has a voracious appetite for learning the Word. He has taken correspondence courses and obtained a Christian Workers Certificate from Taylor University, which allows him to do those things within the prison. He brings the Sunday morning message on occasion. He's a sort of a go-to guy. When his fellow prisoners have a problem, they come to him. So he's a giant. He's a bright light in a dark place, and God put him there and has had his hand on him all along.
By forgiving him, we released ourselves from that bondage, that anger. We would still be caught up in it. Life would not be joyous. We would be angry and bitter, and we would have, the last 15 years would be a waste.